This land is cold-blooded. It butchers the weak and has annihilated civilizations. Even so, there are those who have risen to tower above the beast that is Skyrim. Some are beings of incredible power, casting a shadow across the land, while others flow without trace, leaving a profound peace as the only mark of their passing influence. This is a record of the shadows, an accounting of the marks left on history by the ones who would not be crushed by this land. This is Expedition Skyrim.
Stake here. Think of it. The first dragon seen in Skyrim since the last age. The glory of killing it is ours. If you're with me.
I've got a hungry daughter to feed, so selling
now,
my
what
produce
do you say?
is really the only thing
Shall
I care
we go
about.
kill us a dragon?
Yeah.
Damn right. Let's move out.
I work with my mother to sell fruits and vegetables. It's fun most days, but hard work.
Welcome, dear viewers, to Couch Warrior TV on YouTube. I'm the Couch Warrior, and this is episode 1 of Expedition Skyrim. And this is a very special episode in that this is going to be kind of the prologue episode for the entire series. In other words, this is the episode where I kind of explain what Expedition Skyrim is all about, and I consider this episode to be sort of required viewing for those people who kind of want to understand and fully participate in the episodes that are going to be coming up here in the future. So you will probably see me from time to time in the YouTube video comments referring people back to this video to review what the objectives are, what the platform is, what the format is, and just generally, get their questions answered about the series by viewing this video. So the idea here is that with a prologue video like this, we can kind of set the stage and set expectations for what the series is going to be all about so that we're not wasting time in every single episode trying to re-explain to people what the series is about and what they can expect to get out of it and how to participate. So without further ado, let's launch into this. So what is Expedition Skyrim? Well, Expedition Skyrim is an analysis of Skyrim-related character concepts as found on the Tamrielvault.com website. So, if you're familiar with Tamriel Vault, and if you're familiar with Couch Warrior TV and Character Crusade podcast, you know that we embarked on a mission not too long ago to try to highlight some of the amazing character builds that were on Tamriel Vault. And what we discovered through that process was it's extraordinarily difficult in a short 12 to 15 minute video to really fully capture the nuance of these amazing character build concepts. It's just too difficult. And well, I love, highlighting good content and doing the video production and all the things that go with that. I felt like it wasn't really doing justice to the build, and it wasn't doing a whole lot to show off what I believe is the best work of Couch Warrior TV and Character Crusade podcast. So we took a little break, and Tamriel Vault moved to a new platform. Once that was completed, I got into conversations again with those folks over there, and they had the suggestion of doing something a bit more long form, doing something where I have an opportunity to actually play out the character build of my choice, have some fun with it, and not feel so much pressure to produce these short videos on a recurring basis, but rather do a continuing series, which allows me to get a better sense for the character, how the build is put together, try the different options that are suggested by the build author, and so on and so forth. And so that is kind of where my idea for Expedition Skyrim came from. It was basically sort of left open to say, how do you want to do this? This is our suggestion. Would you be interested? And I thought, hell yeah, I'd be interested. That sounds great. I love the idea of being able to play a character out a little bit more and flesh it out and really have the time required to think about character development besides just the tactical pieces of the build and so forth. So that is really what this is all about. This series is going to be exploring in depth some of these character build concepts. We're going to be trying some things out, and there's going to be a lot of experimentation, and there's going to be some discussion as well. And I will be getting into some more information about the format later on in this episode. But first, I wanted to basically answer some general questions for those of you who are not familiar with the basis for this. In other words, what is a character build? You'll hear me refer to them quite often as character concepts. I prefer the term character concepts only because, as it applies to Expedition Skyrim, these are going to be an analysis of not only the character build from the technical perspective, but I'm going to be throwing in a lot of my own things stemming from my propensity to create well-developed character backgrounds and stories and things like that. And I think that's what makes this series special. I think we get the creativity of Tamriel Vault and the creativity of Character Crusade podcast and Couch Warrior TV mixed together to create characters that are not only very well technically researched, but also come with some great, I think, highly developed character background ideas. So really, the mission of this series is to not only expose some of this great content to the light of day, but give those of you who are participating and those of you who are just sitting back and watching and enjoying some ideas that you can use in your own games, whether it be for the specific build we're talking about or something else that you have in mind on your own or whatever it is. I think the emphasis here is on creativity and looking for ways to make everybody's game more fulfilling. So the objective is to really help make that happen by exposing some great content while at the same time discussing ways that we can enhance it, things that we can do with mods and outside of mods to add to our games. So, who am I? Well, my name is Stu. I am also known as Couch Warrior from the Couch Warrior TV YouTube channel. That is a YouTube channel that has been in existence for about 4 years now, and I am exclusively focused on Skyrim. I have been for that entire time. My experience with Skyrim starts on the Xbox, and I started making videos, really kind of story-focused videos on the Xbox in Skyrim, and then sort of eventually gravitated to the PC where I could use mods and enhance those stories. And the rest is history. I started the Character Crusade podcast with two friends, Matt and Joe, and we have been doing that podcast now for a year and a half, and we have recently started live streaming, which has been really amazing fun. The audience is building, and we spend almost all of our time in that podcast focused on character development within Skyrim, and that includes tools and tips, things that we can do on our own to enhance characters, and things that we can do with the help of mods to enhance our characters, even transitioning into the creation of our own mods in some cases to help enhance our gameplay experience. And you can see some of that stuff in action by watching some of the other channel playlists. So we do have a playlist on Couch Warrior TV that features the podcast, which of course is also available in audio format, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, all that. But then we also have on Couch Warrior TV some playlists that are really just focused on stories built in Skyrim. And, talking about how we can take some of the things that we discuss in the podcast and actually apply them in practical ways in-game to make our games better. So one of the things that was important to me in going into this is that I understand completely how a character build is constructed. And essentially, for those of you who aren't familiar, a character build is kind of a written set of play rules, concepts, and ideas that use generally the vanilla game setup to help you create more highly focused and interesting characters and experience the game in ways that you may not have before. So I think what a build document does is it helps to guide gameplay and kind of walk you down the road of playing a particular character, concept, or archetype, if you will, and gives you some general rules that you can follow when it comes to determining how you're going to spend your skill points, what perks you're going to buy, what equipment you're going to use, what role-play tools you might consider using, what quests you might follow, things like that. And in my experience, that kind of structured gameplay tends to be more rewarding on the whole than just going in and playing willy-nilly without giving it any thought. There's a very big difference, and we talk about this on the podcast as well, between playing and playing with intent. And I find that playing with intent only enhances the experience. And build documents help you do that. And there are tons and tons of build documents on Tamriel Vault. You can go out there and just take a look, search by race, search by character type, whatever it is, and then peruse through those and see what ideas you can come up with. Now, you can find a build document and follow it to the letter, or you can borrow pieces from some and come up with your own concept. But the long and the short of it is that these are folks who have play tested this, they've come up with a concept, and they've taken the time to exhaustively document this. And it is a lot of work. So in order to ensure that I was paying the proper respect to these character builds and the authors that have created them, I created my own character build. And I went through the process of doing this. If you go to Couch Warrior TV on YouTube and find the Mortal Blade playlist, that is, I want to say 20, 21, something like that, videos that are focused on play testing a character build for a character build called the Mortal Blade, which is kind of a warrior priest. And that entire series is focused on play testing concepts that will become part of that character build. And during the process, what I discovered is it generated some amazing conversation in the YouTube comments, and that all kind of bled into episodes of the podcast as well. It became, there are aspects of that playtest experiment that became topics on the podcast and created this wonderful discourse among those people who were actually helping me vet the build and were interested in playing it when it was done. And so we did this, 21 episode series that followed this character Sagramore through this journey to become the Mortal Blade. And during that time, we tested roleplay concepts, we tested battle tactics, we tested equipment, we did all kinds of interesting things. primarily focused on the vanilla perk trees. And then when it was all done, I documented that build, went over it quite a few times, and then finally posted it on Tamriel Vault. And that process gave me a great appreciation for the amount of work and detail that goes into creating a good character build. I will tell you that from start to finish, I invested easily over 100 hours in the concept. So if you're interested in taking a look at that, I will put a link to the Mortal Blade character build in the show notes. But the exercise, I think, was essential to help me understand what it was we were talking about. What's the scope? What's the scale of this? What is the level of effort required to create an excellent character build, you know? And I do have a very good appreciation and an understanding for that now, which to me was absolutely essential when going into this thing. So let's talk a little bit about kind of how all this is going to fit together. So the format of this is going to be interesting. Whereas the previous Tamriel Vault videos were really more or less discussions accompanied with game footage, and they were short, 12 to 15 minutes, I would think, tops. And we did 3 of those before we ran out of steam, realizing that it was too much effort to try and get a complete understanding of a character build for only a 15-minute video. So the change here in format is that I'm going to focus on these builds in more of a long-form fashion. So each build I focus on will be released as a series, which will include gameplay footage, somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 to 8 hours of total gameplay footage. That will begin with an intro episode where we're introduced to the concept and to the author, and then I will proceed to take that character through a number of adventures based on whatever it is I want to do and based on what the recommendations of the author are in the build document. And then I will share that experience with you, and that will be a combination of different things. It will be primarily through pre-recorded videos, like the one you're looking at now, but it will also be mixing in some live streaming as well. And this stuff will be published on Couch Warrior TV and republished on TamrielVault.com. So that's kind of how it's going to fit together. And then when the series is over, when we've gotten through anywhere between 6 and 8 hours of total footage, broken up into individual episodes, then we're going to do a recap video where we pull together some of the essential pieces from our experience, and I will do a bit of a summary voiceover, kind of explaining what the high points of the build are and what our experience was and where you can find more resources and information about the concept, and we will tie it up in a nice, neat bow. So that is really how that's going to work. So the platform for this is going to be primarily YouTube, but there's going to be a lot of supporting information. So the videos will be released on YouTube. The live streams will be streamed on YouTube and also restreamed on Twitch, probably on the Tamriel Vault Twitch channel. So you'll have a couple of different places there where you can see any live streams that come out. But the other thing that we're going to be doing is engaging in some discussion here. So, in the past, that has happened in the YouTube comments. And I'm completely fine with that. It's certainly convenient to leave comments and start discussions while also watching the videos. However, if it turns out that the series is popular enough and we need to find a way to really focus the discussion a bit more, perhaps we migrate over to the Tamriel Vault forum system and we create a thread for each series or something like that where we can have a little bit more meaningful or deeper discussion, where we can have kind of multi-threaded conversations going on, things like that. So there are some things still in flux here, but that's okay. It's okay to be a little fluid still. We're just getting started. So we're just going to kind of play it by ear and see how it all comes together. So there's going to be discussion. There's going to be video and live streaming. The other thing that we are going to be doing, obviously, is linking to the build documents and stuff like that on Tamriel Vault. We will be linking and kind of rounding up all the series information on charactercrusade.com, and we will be discussing things that have been happening with each series in recent history on the podcast on a bi-weekly basis. So as we progress through a character concept and learn some things and make some decisions and have some conversation, there will be recaps and stuff like that on the podcast as well. That's just, one more outlet for information on the series. So, all right. That brings us to the topic of resources with regard to this. Obviously, each one of these concepts has a well thought out and documented build document, which is typically in the archive on tamrielvault.com. But in addition to that, we're going to try to enhance the experience in a number of different ways. I am a mod user and a mod builder. I have built probably over 100 mods that I use in my own gameplay. And generally speaking, those are retextures, they're small quests, they're letters and books, things that I use personally to tie my stories together. So it is apparent to me that, I think part of the experiment of Expedition Skyrim is to take a look at some of the builds that we find on Tamriel Vault and really discuss how those builds can be interpreted for mods. So a lot has been said about most of these builds from the vanilla perspective, and I don't play vanilla, so my objective is really going to be to look at these builds and kind of create an interpretation of these builds based on some kind of reasonable mod lineup. So each one of the build series will have a detailed mod list, which will be compiled on ModWatch and linked in the show notes and linked everywhere we can link it, so that you'll be able to go back and look at what the mod setup was for a particular concept series. And then, cherry pick whatever mods you think you want to use in your own interpretation of that, or, just borrow from our recommendations for that matter. And during the series, it's likely I'll be referencing mods quite a bit, because part of what we want to do is we're kind of, think of it as we're having this philosophical discussion, right? Or scientific discussion in a way, of how we can take a build that was designed for vanilla perk trees and convert it to enhanced perk trees, still being true to the build, still honoring the concept as it was written. And I love that discussion, because I think it's a wonderful one to have, and it creates just this wonderful discourse as we discuss different mod options, things like that. So mods will be discussed heavily. Mod lists will be made available for your convenience, so you can look forward to that. Of course, the build page, we talked about that. You'll have that to access anytime you want. And then the other thing that we're going to do as part of the roundup, after 6 to 8 hours of playtime, we will start to become familiar, and in some cases, perhaps even attached to the characters that we're watching in the series. And so at the end of each series, my plan is to basically take that character and recreate the character as an NPC and preset, which will be launched onto the Nexus. So it'll be basically set up as an NPC follower that you could take on, and I will do my best to kind of mimic the perk setup from the build and put an AI package with it that makes sense, but it will be part of the follower faction so that you'll be able to take these characters on as followers. In addition to that, each one of these follower mods will include a preset, And if you're not familiar with what a preset is, it's basically a small mod that you could load that would allow you to create your own character that looked exactly like the character that you saw in game. So the way that works typically is when I put together an NPC package, it usually includes the follower NPC in a preset so that if you have it loaded when you get into the character creation screens, if the character is a female Breton, for example, you can go to the Breton race, you can switch to female, and you can go to the presets slider, slide it all the way to the far right, and you'll see that preset pop up, and you can select it, and then you'll have a character that looks exactly like the one that you saw in the videos. So you have the option. You can take on a character to be your follower, or you can actually play as the character, which is pretty cool for those people who like that sort of thing. Obviously, there are certain things that I can't do in an NPC mod. I can't account for what armor and equipment mods and stuff like that you're running. So the character will be basically set up to follow the vanilla perk and gear recommendations as they're laid out in the build documents on Tamriel Vault. A lot of those build documents include kind of unique enchanted armor and weapons from the vanilla game and stuff like that. Obviously, those won't be included in the character's inventory either, but I will endeavor to create something that's relatively close. So that is the plan. So, I think much fun to be had there. A lot of different things to try, especially if you like a particular concept and the character as you saw it played in the video. So that brings us to this question of mods. I mentioned it just briefly, but let's talk about it a little bit more. Most of the character builds that you're going to find on TamrielVault.com are built to the vanilla perk trees, and that makes perfect sense because what we want is we want people who are playing game on PC and console to be able to try out the concept. Well, what I'm planning on doing in the series is kind of taking that a step further, okay? So we've seen in the build documents what the vanilla layout is. What I would like to do in my series is I'm going to interpret that build, that character concept, in a world where mods are included. So what I've done is I have created a base setup, which will be the base for every single character that I highlight in the series. And I just wanted to take a moment to talk about some of the more critical mods that are going to be included in that base. When I create videos, I try to create the prettiest looking videos that I can while still having a game that performs. And thanks to Cal at Dirty Weasel, Dirty Weasel YouTube channel. If you haven't checked it out, please do. He has a wonderful 2016 modding guide where he goes step by step, in-depth analysis. And I have basically worked personally with Cal and followed his series of videos as well to create the cleanest, hopefully most bug-free mod setup that I can. So I have a lot of mods that kind of enhance the way that the game looks. But in addition to that, I have some mods in here that enhance gameplay also. And the ones that are particularly relevant to this project and have the most impact on these builds are mods that are things like perk overhauls and stuff like that. So among the more critical mods that I'm going to be using in every single episode is Ordinator perk overhaul. That one is a pretty stunning, pretty amazing perk overhaul. And so I'm going to be interpreting each one of these character concepts into the perk, the Ordinator perk structure, which I think should be very interesting. The Ordinator perk structure is very deep, and it allows for some really interesting conversation around how to, for example, take a character build that's highly focused on a certain set of perks, say in the restoration tree, and kind of evolve that discussion into okay, let's take a look at how Ordinator is different than the vanilla perk trees, and how can we interpret this build in the context of what Ordinator offers and still be true to the build, but provide some interesting enhancements to gameplay. So Ordinator is a big one that is going to feature, I think, prominently in every build. The other one that's going to feature prominently is Thunderchild, which is kind of a overhaul of the Dragon Shout system. It adds additional Dragon Shouts and additional ways in which to acquire Dragon Shouts. That one I like very much because it adds some additional shouts, but adds some interesting new functionality insofar as you have alternate ways in which to acquire new words or mix words together, rather. So that one is cool, and I like it because it's created by the same mod author who does Ordinator, so I think that, they work well together, and I like the fact that they're coming from a single source, so that is a very good thing. So we'll be working that in. And the vast majority of these builds include shouts as part of their setup. They have recommended shouts as well as, perks and spells and things like that. So I think that'll be particularly helpful. I'm also going to be using alternate start, which will allow us to create these characters in new and interesting locations, not necessarily be so focused on them being the Dragonborn and going through the whole vanilla start. We can create characters that aren't the Dragonborn. We can do other interesting things there. And then I'm also going to be using Race Menu. Race Menu is a staple for me. It is the way that I can get a character to look individualistic, and that is going to be absolutely critical to the character development piece of this series. So on the one side, we've got the kind of technical character build concept. And on the other side, we've got character development, where we're talking about, okay, we've said generally what this character concept looks like, but now let's talk about the individual character that we're seeing on screen. What is that character's name? What do they look like? What is their background? What made them the character that they are now? And what items or what restrictions, for example, can we find in the build concept itself that we can draw upon to further enhance the development of that character background? So all of that stuff is vitally important. Race Menu is one of the ways that we can do that. Now, I have a number of other things that are, absolute staples that I always use. Immersive armors, immersive weapons, the list goes on. The base setup for this series is, probably about 150 mods with maybe a total of 125 ESPs or plugins loading. So I think that is a good base. And then depending on the character type, if there's something out there on Nexus that I know is going to be absolutely amazing for a particular concept, I will go out and download that, configure it, and make it part of the mix. But you'll always be able to find that information in the build documents and also in the mod list. So, that kind of sums it up, I would say. Again, I'm really looking forward to this. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And one of the things that I have been looking for is, characters to play just for fun. I have a whole series of videos focused on, the whole Rune Runner series, where I'm focused on the adventures of Vander and Robard and these other characters. But those are characters that are so immersed in my story structure that, if I just want to kick back and, play Skyrim for an hour, I can't really play those characters. I have to play those characters with purpose, where I'm capturing specific scenes and I'm following the storyline. These characters, I'm free to kind of wander Skyrim and try things and experiment, and I think that's really what this series is all about. Experimentation, discussion, ideas, fun, enjoyment, and just really kind of getting the word out about this wonderful resource that is Tamriel Vault, and the authors there who are putting so much work into these character concepts. So I'm very excited about that. Now, the series will be getting started very soon. Having gotten this episode out and setting the stage for what is to come, I hope to be producing the first video in Volume 1 of our Expedition Skyrim series next week. And we will be focusing on a character build concept called the Demon Hunter. The Demon Hunter has been created by No Snakes Alive on TamrielVault.com. You can check it out. Last time I checked, it had something like close to 650 endorsements, which is one of the, I think, the most popular character build on Tamriel Vault ever. I'm very excited about it. This particular build, I didn't pick it just because it was popular. I picked it because it had ideas that resonated with me. And to be honest, I didn't even look at the number of endorsements it had until I'd already made the decision to play it. I think that says something about how compelling the concept is. So with this particular concept, if you want to go out and take a look at it yourself, I'll put a link in the show notes down below. Really, the focus is heavy armor and bow. And, these are things that I love. I've always loved playing archers, but I've always played the sneaky archer. And this is a battlefield archer. This is an archer who is all about kind of controlling the flow of traffic on the battlefield and funneling enemies into traps and things like that. And that is accomplished through the use of some destruction and lots of restoration, which to me is really just a cool combo. So I decided to do this character. And you're seeing some footage on screen right now of this character with Lydia following her around as a follower right now, which is kind of a new thing. So the way that this is going to be set up is, in order for us to really get a complete picture of how the build is supposed to function, we can't play these builds at level 1. We have to play them at higher level so that we can kind of see these perks being used, and we can see higher level spells being utilized to flesh out some of the tactical things that these characters are capable of. So in order to do that, what I'm going to be doing is I will be creating these characters, I will be gearing them up, and then I will be leveling them through console commands up to about level 30. And then at level 30, I will be playing them off camera for a while to get accustomed to their setup and how they work. And then once I feel like I've got everything kind of fleshed out, then we'll be commencing with the series, which means that when these characters get into the series, we're not going to be watching, level 1 characters. We're going to be watching characters probably above level 30. The only time I can think of that there might be an exception to that rule is if we have a character build that is very roleplay focused, where the focus isn't necessarily so much on tactics and high-level spells and things that can only be acquired at certain levels, but more of a build that's focused on a roleplay style that can be accomplished as well at first level as it can at 30th level. In those cases, we might get a smattering of different things. We might see some first level content if it's particularly important to the concept, and we might be seeing some high level content as well. So that is it, folks. I'm really looking forward to this, and I so much appreciate being given the opportunity to work with Tamriel Vault on this project. I think it's going to be fun, rewarding, and best of all, I think it is going to expose to the community some really, really great content that is tucked away in Tamriel Vault. And hopefully, we can get some of these authors the credit they deserve for all the work that's been put into these concepts. Thank you very much, everybody. I look forward to seeing you in the series, Until next time, game on.